The problem of evil is the biggest philosophical objection to Christianity.
Pah, that's not the biggest objection. I have made way bigger objections than that. My favourite being the sign that I attached to the moon. That one's bloody massive. Now, to be fair, it is a pretty good objection to a particular kind of God who is gifted a particular set of wants, needs and powers that all contradict each other, especially when compared to the state of reality. But that is only because whoever decided to give him those characteristics was clearly an idiot.
If God is all-powerful and God is all-good, why does he allow evil? Many people have tried to answer this in different ways.
Yeah, and all of them have been utterly worthless. The one that annoys me the most is the free will argument that completely ignores the existence of non-human created sources of suffering, and then skips along like they have said anything of value, and certainly never even try to prove that free will is actually even a thing, either physically or metaphorically. You know, because you can't.
The heretical Christian Science cult says that evil doesn't actually exist, it's just an illusion, but this contradicts both scripture and common sense.
God literally forbid that a Christian sect ignore common sense. They never do that all the time, although I'm not going to lie, the idea that evil is just an illusion does sound intriguing. Makes it sound like if I kill enough people that I'm going to go invisible, which would be awesome.
Theologically liberal Christians often hold to something called process theology, which denies that God is all-powerful. It says God is learning how to be God over time, but this is heresy and also contradicts scripture.
It is actually interesting to hear about various sects of Crimsbianity, especially ones that attempt to square their faith with reality, because of course they are always considered heretical. What, you want this bullshit that was written by people who didn't know where the sun went at night to try to make some kind of sense? Burn the witch!
St. Augustine says that evil exists because of free will, meaning God didn't create evil, we did. And there is a lot of truth to this. But this is an incomplete theory, because we're going to have free will in heaven, but there's going to be no evil in heaven.
What a shock that your incomplete free will argument ignores the whole entirety of nature problem. Probably because it absolutely dunks on the idea, and you probably quite like the free will argument, because it sounds reasonable to you. Of course, sounding reasonable and being reasonable, not always the same thing. Also, throwing on top the whole free will in a thing that God made without evil, demonstrating that if he can do that there, why not here? Oh no, not all powerful. Shonk.
St. Irenaeus says that evil is necessary for our character development to grow into who God intended us to be. This is closer to what I believe.
So you believe, or nearly believe, that God can't make humans who we are supposed to be without inflicting pain and suffering into the world. There is no other way that he could do that. He does not have the ability to do it in a way that doesn't cause misery all the time. Oh no, look who isn't all-powerful again. Why do you keep sharing all these heretical, by your standard, ideas with us, Redeemed Zoomer? I knew you hated God.
John Calvin says God allows evil because he is glorified in defeating it, and that God creates the world as a theater for his redemption. This is closest to what I believe.
Ew, really? The feck? That's actually super gross. Basically, all the pain and suffering and death and disease in the world was put there on purpose by God in order to make him look good. And this is a character you believe to be worthy of your undying devotion. This is the fireman who starts fires so that he can be the first to put them out in an attempt to make people believe that he's the greatest firefighter to ever exist. It matters not to him the death and destruction he has wrought. And your dumbass still thinks he's a hero because at least he puts the fires out in the end. Or a healthcare worker who deliberately causes cardiac arrest in their patients so they can be the one who gets to save their lives via CPR and what have you. Okay, some of them might die, and of course a heart attack invariably causes irreparable damage, but hey, they did bring most of them back. Should give them an award, eh? And that, of course, leads into why people might do that. Well, it's usually unearned praise, which, why would God need or even want that? Or praise at all? The guy is supposed to be sufficient. Not only is there no reason for him to want praise, there's no reason he'd create anything at all. The guy should be happily humming Freebird to himself forever. And yes, of course he knows Freebird. The song has some godly solos in it.
But what I believe is that evil is necessary not just for our character development, but for the development of all of creation.
You just keep falling down this trap, don't you? The word necessary should never, ever, ever apply to the things that an all-powerful God does. Like, seriously, if there is nothing outside of his abilities, then he should be able to make a world without resorting to things he apparently despises. And hell, even if you want to throw in, actually, God can only do things that are logically possible. Well, aside from the fact that that throws in a constraint out of nowhere for no other reason than, of course, omnipotence is illogical, it also suggests that there's no logical way to make good things without endless murder, which is unsurprising from an ideology that brought us the Inquisition, not gonna lie.
Not that creation is evil, but that creation is what happens when God triumphs over evil, and this is how God is glorified in defeating evil.
Easily one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. It suggests that reality, a thing that God created, is inherently evil. So God makes things that are automatically evil, and he's shaping it into something good afterwards. Which, while somewhat poetic sounding, does bring up the question of why the again all-power boy can't just make good things in the first place. Why is his default setting pain and suffering? Or worse still even, the existence of evil is simply something that is always there alongside him. It apparently can never be defeated. Or perhaps he just doesn't want to permanently destroy it. And ultimately, that'd make you wonder why you would think such a creature was even capable of good intentions in the first place.
I became Christian in 2017, the night I realized why God allows evil, because it explains so much once you understand it.
You became a Christian when you came to a stupid conclusion about why a made-up man would cause the evil he pretends he didn't want to exist. Because it makes him look good. Not gonna lie, RZ, that's a really freaking stupid reason to become a Christian. No wonder you keep making super dumb videos that I have to take the piss out of. Ironically, if I was like your god, it would turn out that I'm actually you, and I make your videos stupid on purpose so I have something easy to refute, and then everyone will tell me how smart I am, at least by comparison.
For the past 9 years, I've been refining my theory, building on the insights of previous Christian theologians and other philosophers, because I do care about maintaining traditional Christian orthodoxy.
Oof, so much. For starters, if you're trying to maintain orthodoxy, then you are simply hamstringing yourself. You have made it effectively impossible to pursue all lines of inquiry, lest you accidentally do a heresy. But the thing is, if you actually give a shit about the truth, no line of reasoning or discovery should be off limits in that regard, especially for the man who seems to genuinely believe he is developing the one true argument against the problem of evil. Also, the fact that you genuinely think that you're doing that, well, narcissism and apologetics do seem to go hand in hand, so I'm hardly surprised.
Only now do I think my theory is refined enough to present to the public, but I'm still willing to welcome any criticism.
As long as it comes from the right places, though, I'm sure my criticisms won't count, because I don't already agree with you. I mean, how can an outside observer possibly notice all the gigantic flaws in your idiotic nonsense? Just because I don't already accept it as absolute truth. That's ridiculous.
My personal theodicy, or explanation of why God allows evil, combines St. Irenaeus' theodicy with St. Maximus the Confessor's Logos theology, John Calvin's doctrine of providence, Karl Barth's doctrine of evil, Wolfhart Pannenberg's insights on the Trinity and eschatology, and the theories of Charles Darwin on natural selection.
Wow, you really threw me a curveball with that last one. It's like, here's a load of old bollocks that has failed to provide sufficient proof or explanations or anything for our version of God and his behavior. And also here's this actual fact about reality idea that has nothing to do with any theology ever, let alone the Bible. Not gonna lie, you got me.
If you want to know how I reconcile Darwinian evolution with traditional Reformed Christianity, just watch this previous video of mine. I promise your objections are answered there.
Oh, I bet they are, and I'm sure that it also isn't a video where you demonstrate that your understanding of evolution is at best flawed and at most likely, considering all of your other videos I've covered, completely incoherent. But hey, thanks for the recommendation for more of your videos to rip into. It is never not a lot of fun.
But first, only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you want to see more, consider subscribing. It's free and you can always change your mind. If you liked the video, make sure to click the like button, and if you didn't, make sure to click the dislike button twice.
That's actually a decent little joke. Might be the first theist attempt at humour that genuinely got a chuckle out of me. But of course, don't do all that shit for him. You should be doing it for me. And the secret trick is that if you don't like me, don't click the dislike button at all. What you need to do is click the like button 3 times. That'll show me.
The first thing you gotta understand is that God can permit evil temporarily if it leads to a greater good, and God is more glorified by defeating evil than by evil just never having existed.
Again, why does he need the glory? Why can't he just make something amazing and that be enough? Why does he have to start a war and then come in playing peacemaker when he's the one who keeps bombing the shit out of everyone else? All this says is that he wants the best of all worlds for himself, to be able to both inflict pain and suffering and then get all the praise for getting rid of it. If that's what you have to do to be considered great, it sounds to me like you were never all that great in the first place.
The heroes of all the best stories are only heroes because of the villains they defeat. If I wrote a story about a man who lived in paradise and nothing bad ever happened, that would be a pretty crappy story.
First off, bad thing happens and villain are not the same concepts. And second, there are plenty of fantastic stories that do not revolve around conflict. One of my favourite set of stories is called Way of the House Husband, a manga/anime, yes I know, weeb sick, about the immortal dragon who decides to become the homemaker while his wife is the breadwinner. There is very little and sometimes no conflict in many of the stories, and they are brilliant as the focus is less on high stakes and more the juxtaposition of this incredibly dangerous man doing mundane household chores. And it's very funny. The closest it gets to conflict is usually him taking those mundane situations way too goddamn seriously. It's hilarious. The fact that you have never heard of a story that doesn't need a bad guy to be interesting says far more about your media literacy than it does about the existence of any god. And just to add, the ironic thing here is that you are heavily implying that heaven is a place devoid of conflict and thus would be absolutely awful to exist in. Although I suppose self-owns count as conflict, and I can't see you stopping even after death, so...
Reformed theology believes that our universe is a story written by God, and Jesus is the main character. Jesus is God writing himself into the story.
You have got to be kidding me. Author insert characters are considered one of the lowest forms of literature. A person who can only write about themselves, especially when they make themselves the one and only main character, let alone of reality itself. And throw on top them having superpowers, becoming the ultimate Mary Sue, well, that would rarely be considered among the literary greats. Again, with the refuting yourself using pure, unadulterated ignorance. It's amazing.
The idea that God allows evil because he brings good out of it comes from Genesis 50:20. Obviously, it was evil for Joseph's brothers to sell him into slavery, but God brought good out of it by using Joseph to save Egypt.
And of course, couldn't possibly have done that without using a literal slave to achieve his alleged goals. And what of every single other person sold into slavery? Where is their grand savior narrative? Oh right, no, they simply died in bondage, serving only the interests of the arseholes who bought them. Also, a huge problem with this narrative, by your standards, it ultimately means the enslavement of a human being was a good thing, and people like to pretend the Bible isn't pro-slavery.
More importantly, the most evil thing that ever happened was the death of Christ on the cross, but the best thing that ever happened was the resurrection of Christ, which wouldn't have happened without the death of Christ.
Oh no! Holy shit, he doesn't see it, does he? If one of the worst things to ever happen, and one of the best things to ever happen, presumably each to the same magnitude, considering it's God, and he doesn't exactly do things by halves, if they both happen to the same guy, then the resulting amount of good in the world is exactly 0. You just made it so that God's plan was to utterly cancel out his own influence. Holy shit, dude. It's staggering just how bad you are at this shit. It's like you want me to make fun of you. That 9 years of developing your theodicy really would have been better spent picking crap out of your belly button. At least it would have been clean by now.
In fact, the first thing God ever did was call light out of the darkness. This can be explained musically. In music, a consonant chord where the notes fit together sounds good. But what sounds even better is when a dissonant chord where the notes don't fit together resolves to a consonant chord.
Well, I would trust you to explain the intricacies of music theory as much as I will trust you to explain literature. That is to say, not at all. But even within this analogy, if going where I think it doesn't work. Discord in the music is not even remotely analogous to pain and suffering. It is a deliberate choice that makes something sound better. It's not evil, it's options. If it were like evil at all, it would cause your ears to bleed, your eyes to fall out, and you would shit yourself. And then you would defend it and say, that makes the music better because God will stop doing it probably. What a hero.
This is a good enough explanation of evil for the average Christian.
For God's non-existent sake, would you stop being so hilarious by accident? If this is a good enough explanation for your average Christian, then you are saying the average Christian is a thoughtless moron who doesn't even try to understand the problems with their theology. And while I don't exactly disagree, I would like to give them slightly more credit than that, if only because it would be awesome if the average Christian were slightly better than that. But your sub-count tells another, far more depressing story, unfortunately.
God allows evil so he can display his redemption.
Thing is, it would be bad enough if God simply allowed evil so that he could run in and save the day from, again, a thing he let happen in the first place. But why stop the runaway cart from rolling down the hill when you can save half the school kids that get run over by it after it's already gotten loose? And hell, you could even clean up all the bloody viscera and maybe put out the fires of the inevitably crashed trolley. Here's the problem. To fail to prevent an evil that would come at zero cost to you with ample time and ability for you to do so is exactly as evil as doing evil yourself. But to fail to do so just so that you can get the opportunity to make everyone say what a great guy you are is a whole other level of sociopathic behavior. Gross.
So you could stop watching here, but if you want, you can take this much deeper and connect it to all of creation. Because this process of God bringing good out of evil is not only how God accomplishes redemption, but also how God accomplishes creation, especially if you believe in Darwinian evolution.
Stop here. I think you should take your own advice, my dude. If your basic bitch version of theology immediately fails this hard, I can only imagine that your deep dive, instead of taking us to levels of profundity never seen before as you seem to think it will, what it will actually lead to is the kind of stupidity that could level buildings and cause trains to derail. So I'll thank you for the out, and I will take it. It's better this way than allowing you to say shit so catastrophically dumb that you end up making my critique completely redundant. I've got kids to feed, man. And I know you will. Just how you made the literal act of Jesus' crucifixion a thing that Christianity is freaking based on. Utterly pointless. Good job.